Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking through how I lino print a repeat pattern, and I'm going to be printing on fabric today. I'm also going to talk through everything that I use, but before we get into it I just wanted to give a little disclaimer. I'm not a professional and I'm completely self-taught doing this, but I just wanted to share the things that have worked for me. So before I get into it, I'm going to just go through everything that I'm going to be using today and where I got them from. In case you want to get them, I will leave everything linked below in the description. The first thing that I'm going to be using is some tracing paper. I just used the Crawford and black tracing paper from The Works. It doesn't need to be any special tracing paper. I think this is about £2. This is just so I can draw out my design and make sure that the measurements are all correct before I put it onto my stamp rubber. The next thing that I'm going to be using is the Speedball Speedy Carve to carve out my design. This is definitely my favourite stamp rubber for printing on fabric. I haven't tried doing a repeat pattern with any other kind of surface. This is just what I found worked best for me, and I've just stuck with this. So that's what I'm going to be using to carve on today. The next thing that you will need is some fabric or a piece of paper to print on. I'm just going to be using this little piece of cotton, but you can print on any other kind of fabric or a piece of paper of your choice. Because I am going to be printing on fabric, I'm going to be using the Speedball block printing fabric ink. This is the ink that I found works best for printing on fabric, and it also works really well for printing a repeat pattern that I found in the past. I just picked this up from Hand Printed UK, but I will leave the link in the description below. The next thing that you will need is a roller, and again, because I'm fabric printing, I'm using the SD fabric printing roller, which I also got from Hand Printed UK. I just find it works best for picking up a lot of ink. I forgot to say before, but I will also be using file tools to carve away my design. These are my favourite tools. I've spoken about them in previous videos, but I will link them below as well. These are my favourite tools for carving on lino or any other surface. The last thing that I'm going to be using is a Baron. My dad actually made this one for me, but you can get them from Speedball. I will link a couple in the description below. I'm just using this to apply pressure on the top of the stamp rubber to transfer the design onto the fabric. So now I will show you drawing out my design, and I'll show you how I do all the measurements and things to make sure that the design will line up, and then I'm just going to carve the design and print it. The first thing I do is measure along the shortest side of my stamp rubber, and this is the measurement I'm going to use to create my square. For the repeat pattern that I'm doing today, it's really important that my square is an exact square, so all of the lines line up properly when I come to print the pattern. I'm just drawing my square out onto the tracing paper. This is where I'm going to draw my pattern and make sure that all of the lines line up properly before I transfer the design over onto the stamp rubber. Then just using normal scissors, I cut out my square, and then I'm ready to start drawing the lines. First of all, I draw a line diagonally down the square from corner to corner, making sure the line goes exactly into the corners. I'm going to create a mirror image on either side of this line for my repeat pattern. I'm just measuring up either side 30mm, and then up the centre I measured 90mm, I think, and these are the measurements I'm going to use to create my first lines. It's really important that any lines on the outside of the square line up exactly on the mirror image. This way your print will line up properly. If any of the measurements are out, the print won't line up properly and it will be really wonky. I like to use the corners for places for the lines to meet because I think this works really effectively when making the pattern. Once I've drawn all of the lines that reach the outside of the square, I can then fill in some extra details on the inside. These don't matter as much, they don't have to be like as precise measurements, but it is still really good to make sure that they are like evenly spread apart, just so that the pattern looks nice when you print it and it's all even. Generally when I make repeat patterns, I don't plan it out beforehand and I never know exactly how it will look until it's printed. I like to just play it by ear. but if you want to plan it out, that's perfectly fine, and you can definitely do that before you start drawing the design. When I'm drawing little designs on the inside of my square, I like to make sure that they are half the width from the edge than they are in between each other in the middle. This makes the gap equal when you print the repeat pattern, and you won't have like a massive gap in between the details. When I'm drawing in the corners of my design, I like to make sure that I draw them different on opposite ends so that I know exactly where I'm placing my design and I don't get confused between the two corners when I come to print the design. This will probably be a bit clearer later. I know it sounds super confusing at the moment, but hopefully you will see a little bit better when we get to printing the design. I then just put the design face down on my stamp rubber and trace over it using a pencil. Because my stamp rubber was a little bit too long, I just take a ruler and a scalpel and cut along the edge, making sure that the measurements of my square stay the same. I then start carving my design, and I was using a V-gouge to carve out the finer details because I want to get a really deep cut on the stamp rubber, just to ensure that my design prints cleanly and there is no noise around the print or any excess stamp rubber. I then use a small U-gouge tool to remove larger sections of the detail. I then use a much larger U-gouge tool to remove the background sections of the lino. I find this tool particularly helpful when using stamp rubber because it allows you to get a really deep carve, which will make your print nice and clean and you won't have any excess noise on your print. I did previously do a test print just to make sure that my design was all clean and exactly what I wanted. Then I lay down a little towel. This is just to protect my desk from the printing, and it also helps a little bit with the fabric printing. I then place down my fabric and ink up my block. I like to apply a really thick coat of ink when I'm printing on fabric because I find that this works best for me. I then take my block and I place it in the top left hand corner of my fabric, and I press down all over the block using the barren, and then after I do the same thing with my hands just to make sure I've applied even pressure all over the block. Now this is not a straight repeat pattern, so the next time you place the block you do need to rotate it 90 degrees. It is really useful to work in a clockwise direction around the square, however I like to jump back to the left hand corner, like the bottom left hand corner, and do it like that. Either way is fine, it's just personal preference. I like to focus on the center point of the star in this case as a way of lining up my blocks and ensuring I'm repeating the pattern correctly. Once I've finished one square, I then go ahead and repeat the whole process underneath and to the sides of the print until I have covered all of the fabric with the repeat pattern. I just finished printing and I'm really pleased with it. It did take me a super long time to print, but this is the finished result. I'm really pleased with it. Some of the lines don't quite line up properly, but that's okay. I think it adds to the like handmade feel of it, so I'm really pleased with that. And I did also print another one, but with this one I did make a mistake, so I thought I would show you anyway because it's a really good example of what happens when you don't rotate the pattern properly. As you can see, I massively messed up with this one and it's the complete wrong way around. So that's what happens when you don't properly rotate the pattern each time. It just completely messes up, which is unfortunate, but it was really good for me to show you so you can see what happens and why it's really important to rotate the pattern around. But that is everything I have to show you today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it was useful. If you have any more tips, please leave them in the comments below or let me know over on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.